ever since Mary and I first came to New York, um, no, let me back that up. Those of you who know me know already that I'm a graduate of the federal prison system of the United States. And as soon as I had finished my parole, which was passed largely in San Francisco, Mary and I moved to New York. At first, we didn't have money enough for a piano, and she was a dancer and didn't have enough space in our tiny apartment. So we swung a deal with a church in the West Village that allowed us use of their space in exchange for buffing their floors. I played their piano, which was a nice old broken down Steinway, and Mary danced. And during that period, we got together what would eventually become my 8-hour composition, Industrial Arts, which some critics have called music to commit suicide by. One French critic, in fact, related it to the fact, its repetitious, boring character, to the fact that I had once made music for the movies of Andy Warhol in the mid-60s. Be that as it may, that music, Industrial Arts, although it's a delight to play, and in its entirety an 8-hour composition, that's true, has over the years caused me to lose 17 gigs. The only one I really care about, I mean, the only loss I only care about, was a ribs and chicken joint on the west side at 17th and 10th called the West Boondock. I had got a gig in there. It was hard to get a gig there. The likes of Tommy Flanagan were playing there at the time, and Barry Harris. I finally got a night there, and I thought I was doing well. But while I was playing Industrial Arts, which sort of in extremis sounds like this, and I was only perhaps 10 minutes into it, etc., when a fellow at the bar tossed his cookies and projectile vomited all over the place. This incident was not lost on the owner, Victor. And at the end of the night, Victor informed me that I'd have no gigs there for the foreseeable future. I asked him if I were allowed to audition in the future to come in, and he was a courtly fellow and a brave man. He helped integrate the Southern Pacific Railroad years before. He said yes to that, assuming that I would be polite enough not to come. But I did, and perhaps every half year, then for the next couple of years, I would come in, and Victor was very polite with me. He would say, "Yes, Joel, yes, I hear that you're playing somewhat differently, but I have to remind you that this is the one time that any man has ever vomited in my club because of the music." And we would agree that was quite an event. All right, that went on for several years, and then one afternoon I came in for my twice-a-year audition, and I looked around and I didn't see Victor at all, but perched on a bar stool was the Baroness Nica. And I walked up to her. I recognized her. In fact, my father, when my sister got married in 1960 in New York, my father took me to the Vanguard, and he knew I was into Thelonious Monk, and we heard Monk, and I saw the Baroness Nica. I was later to see a picture of her in Time magazine contemplating Monk, you know, in what's become a famous photograph. But so I recognized her right away. I'd seen her, and it was clear to me that right away that she had part of my heart. And we talked for maybe an hour and a half about everything possible, I guess. And then finally, though, she sort of bestirred herself and said, "But I'm not clear, Joel, on exactly what brings you here." And I said, oh, that's right. I'm here for an audition. I'm hoping to play at the West Boondock." And she said, "You will." There's only one thing I guess I would add to that. We catted around in her Bentley for about an hour, and then she drove me home. And once again, I thought perhaps I'll never be in this woman's presence again. That wasn't the case, but I didn't know. So I said, "Stay here, Nica." And tore upstairs and grabbed Mary out of our fourth floor loft on Bowery, dragged her down and put her in the front seat, and I got in the back seat. It was amazing to see these two formidable women, eyeing each other, etc. And the first words out of the Baroness's mouth were, and I quote, "So, do you intend to have a child by this man?" And Mary said, perhaps thinking of her dance career, "At some point, Nica." And Nica said, "Well, you'd better get cracking, All I can tell you is that our son Max is 28 now.
When would that have been, Joel?
At that time, I hadn't got lucky. Music wasn't yet supporting me, and so I remember I was doing the last of my day jobs. So that would have been 1976 or 77. Because my last day job was working as the weekend laundryman at the Animal Medical Center, doing doggy diapers. Right. Yes, 76 or 77.
And then you knew the Baroness died when? When did the Baroness?
Oh, she didn't die until the mid 80s. Yeah. She became. We were fast friends. In fact, there was. I'm hoping you remember this. I should explain that I'm speaking to some extent to Richard Dworkin, the drummer of the Microscopic Septet. That Nica actually hied herself to a gig in the early days of the Micros, and that was at a place called the Ear Inn on a Sunday afternoon. And she had injured her hip, and she'd fallen on some ice. So once she was in the car, she tended to stay in the car, in her Bentley, which, by the way, she drove with arms extended like this. She had been, of course, a pilot, and so there was something of the aviatrix, in the way she guided her car. She drove extremely fast, and she had a silver hip flask with somewhat watered down hooch. In any case, she listened to us through an open window in the Ear Inn, and then at the end of our set, one by one, we filed in and paid homage to her. And that was delightful, I think, to see, for me, already her friend, to see the other Micros bonding with her, with one exception. I know this sounds like a biblical story, but the alto player at that time was John Zorn, and he would not get in the car. History doesn't record why.
So, what do you think her idea was of you coming to play? Did other piano players or other musicians come to play for Monk?
It wasn't so much that other musicians came. No, that didn't happen often. Famous musicians, I remember, like McCoy Tyner or Art Blakey, would drop by. Blakey, by the way, was convinced that Monk was nuts. That's the way he put it. I should say that there is, to my mind, controversy about this, and I try and keep an open mind about it. If you don't mind, I'll tell you what Monk claimed to be doing all day.
Please.
All right. Nica she found it remarkable that he didn't develop bed sores, since he didn't seem to have anything but cerebral activity, but he didn't sleep during the day. He was awake. Monk claimed that he was aware of certain pseudo-electronic essences out in space, which, if he really concentrated on, he could feel vibrating, and that they were at various distances from him and from each other. And he could pass the entire time in bed calculating those differences, triangulating them, etc., and developing, notions of quanta based on their relationships with each other. He was a math whiz. He had actually gone to Stuyvesant High for a little while. In fact, a friendly math teacher from Stuyvesant gave me his transcript. He had to drop out when a gospel Schauder took him on a tour of the South, which was his first real steady gig. And he had to drop out of Stuyvesant. But Mark at one point on the closeness in Monk's mind between his ideas and mathematical concepts. She once said to me, chaos theory would not be lost on Monk, which was interesting to hear. Now, it wasn't so much, though, that she brought in musicians. She brought in weirdos that she thought might somehow goad him out of bed. I was in with a bunch of witch doctors, just of all stripes and beliefs. I remember a really disturbing masseur who worked on Monk and tried, interestingly, not only to work on his muscles, but to move him slightly out of bed, which failed. I think these were all divine failures on Nica's part.
Divine failure?
Yes, I was just one of them.